my grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's mathematical literacy lesson. My name is Bernard Donko. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. So as we said before in the previous lessons, we are now taking the part 2 of our revision for paper 1. So hang around and let's see what we have entailed. What you should understand is that by the end of doing paper 1 and 2, you should be able to answer all questions that are related to finance, data handling, and probability for your final examination. You should be very comfortable with that. That means for you to be able to answer all the questions, your idea of interest rate and staff taxation, we've dealt with those ones already. But in this lesson, our focus is on data handling. We want to cover every aspect of the questions that we think or we propose that along the lines they will be asking you questions on that. So it is vital that you hang around and you see what we are talking about here. Now let's look at some few baseline questions here. Baseline, those ones that we are teasing ourselves, getting ready to see if we are fully ready for the final. These ones, I want you to look at the term on column A and try to figure out what is the correct answer from column B. So like when we talk of break-even point, looking at A, B, C, D, E, and F, which one do you think will be the best explanation? Break-even point. Have you managed to find out? Break-even point is the point where the income and expenses are the same. So it means we are talking about E. How about mean? Whenever you hear the word mean, you should know we are adding everything, dividing by how many values are there. Meaning we are talking of the sum. So which one talks of the sum here? That is D. So this first one is E. The next one is D. How about variable expense? Vary, changes. So which are we talking about here? We are talking of expenses that change. Good. I hope you are following what I'm doing here. Then the next one is tariff. Whenever we hear tariff, is the cost per unit for a service received. So the charge, the rate, that is what we call tariff. So our answer is B. Then inflation, the increase, the change in price of goods and services over a period of time. So we are talking of A. That is our answer for inflation. Then the last one is what? Salary, the amount of money that we receive for the work that we have done. But then remember, there's a difference between salary and wage. If it is salary, usually it's on a monthly basis. If it's a wage, it can be per week or for every 2 weeks. That one we call it wages. So don't forget that. Now let's look at some few tips. Remember, as I spoke to you in the first part, the question paper is made up of finance, data handling, and probability. And it is counting a total of 150 marks. So you are expected to write that paper in a time of what? 3 hours. Now, where do most of our marks come from? We've already covered the part of the finance. So today our focus is on data handling as well as probability, which means that you need to get yourself ready. So since we have already covered the finance part, we are now shifting to our data handling. Where are the questions going to be coming from? They're coming from this portion called the developing of questions. What do we have there? National and global issues, collecting data, develop and use data collection instruments, interviews. So whenever we talk of data collection instruments, we are talking of issues like interview, questionnaires, recording sheets, surveys. They are all parts of ways of collecting data. Then once you collect the data, you have to then learn to classify and organize them. So we are going to sort them into categorical and numerical. Then you have to know, or you still have to remember how to use frequency tables. They are very important. How about summarizing them? You can summarize using your quartiles, interquartile range, calculate the percentiles. They are all part of data handling. Now we go to how to interpret and analyze. So here you can be asked to draw graphs, not pie chart. Pie chart, if we are having questions on them, they will draw it for us, then they will be asking us to interpret. But line graph, bar graphs, they can definitely ask you to draw them. So let's start. When we talk of data handling, the first part, there must be a question. So if there is no question, then it's very difficult to deal with data handling. Like for example, the teacher wants to find out how many learners in your class are speaking a certain language or a certain food is their favorite. Once there's that kind of question, it gives us the chance to collect the data. So for us to collect the data, some of the data collecting ways include what you call observation. We observe. When you learners are playing on the playground, sometimes the teachers are there to monitor that everything is fine. But what do? They observe. It's a way of collecting data. We can use interviews. We can use surveys. We can even use what we call questionnaires. So all of them are ways of collecting data. Don't forget that. Once you have your data, then we can talk of how to classify the data. So our data which we are collecting, no matter the type, we can either have it as categorical or numerical. So let's start with the categorical. Now remember, we are doing revision. It's not like we are teaching right from the scratch. When we talk of categorical, we are talking of the data that can be put into groups. We can sort them out. Like if you go to the parking lot of the teachers, you realize that maybe there are different types of cars there or different brands. So you can have your Toyotas, the VW, the Audi, the Volvo, and so on. These are kinds of cars that you can put according to the manufacturer. So any kind of data that you can sort or can group, we call it what? Categorical. Sometimes we can sort them like your favorite TV show, the color of the eyes, the birth month, etc. As long as you can sort the data, we call it what? Categorical. Then we have the other type. What if we are not sorting? We can call it what? Numerical. Every time you hear the word numerical, think about it. It deals with what? Numbers. What does it deal with? Numbers. So the numbers, we have got two types. We have got those numbers that we can count as a whole. And then we have got the other kinds of numbers that we can measure. So there are two kinds of numerical or numbers. We have those ones that you can count, and you have got those ones that you can measure. Count like how many learners are currently watching this video. Maybe they're 10, they're 20, whatever the number. That is one type of data. Then we can talk of measuring, like how many minutes have I stayed on the screen with you so far. You are measuring, you are not counting. You are measuring the time. And therefore, every kind of data that you can count and you get whole numbers, we call it discrete data. Do not forget, how do we call it? Discrete data. It means you can count it to get whole numbers. And then if you get a kind of data that you can measure, then we are talking about what? Continuous. Usually it contains decimals. It contains decimal places. So for example, the mass, like the weight of something, the height, they are continuous data. Let me take it again. Under the data, we have categorical and numerical. Categorical means you can sort, you can group it. Then when you come to numerical, it deals with numbers, but there are two types of numbers. We have what we call what? Discrete and continuous. How do you know the difference? Discrete, you can count as whole numbers. Continuous, you can measure. It contains decimals. Don't forget. So now that you have been able to identify whether the data is categorical or numerical, it means that we can now organize our data into tallies or frequency table. So what you see here on the screen is an example of a frequency table. So you have like maybe favorite sport for your classmates. You have rugby, soccer, netball, athletic. You can include other sporting codes like cricket and so on. Then, as you count the number of people who like that kind of sport, we put ticks. So if you can check here, I have put 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 ticks. So then you write the number 4. If you put 4 ticks, that is what we call the tally. What will happen if there were 5 of them? Good. You're going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you cross out the number 5. Then you write the number 5. So that is how you draw a frequency table. Now, let's look at some few example possible questions. It says the height of the South African National Rugby Union team for 2024-2025 are organized in the table below. What do you see here? Currently, what you see on the screen is an example of a frequency table. How do you call it? Frequency table. But you see that if you look at our first example, here we have got titles. Are we together, my learners? But in this one, some of the headings are not there. This space is empty. It means definitely the examiner will be asking you questions about that. So let's check. Another thing that you can also notice is that here they did not give us the value, which means we are expected to find it out. So let's look at our first question, 1.1. Write down the name of the tool that was used to organize this data. What is the name of this table? How do we call it? We are asking you questions on that. Let's look at 1.2. You are supposed to classify the height of the rugby players as discrete or continuous. Remember, I've already explained to you to say, if it is discrete, it means you can count as whole numbers. Rugby players, are they whole numbers like you can count 20, 30, 40, or they contain decimals like they are 15.5 rugby players or 14.3 rugby players? That should give you an idea of what you must choose when it comes to the answers. Then let's talk of 1.3. Identify the missing value represented by A in the table, meaning we want you to find the answer for the letter A. So how do you find the answer? We are going to reveal soon. Let's look at 1.4 then. Identify one error that was made when drawing this table. Is there something that is wrong? Definitely yes. But then now we want you to be the one to tell us what kind of mistake was made. So let's reveal our answers. We go to 1.5 first. It says, choose the step that follows in the data handling cycle from the list below. Write the correct letter in your answer book. So we have representing data, summarizing data, and interpreting data. When you look at this whole thing, which one do you think it belongs to? So here are our answers. Remember the first one, we were saying what instrument was used here? We used a frequency table. The next one, continuous. Then the value of A is 6. Some values have been repeated in both intervals. So if you go back, you can see there's 1.8 and there's 1.8, 1.85 and 1.85. So sometimes if you're not careful, it can actually confuse you on that. And then the last one, our answer is B. So now let's talk of what we call measures of central tendency. What are we talking about? Measures of central tendency. Whenever you hear measures of central tendency, we are talking about mean, median, and mode. Don't include the range. The range belongs somewhere else. Mean, median, mode. Those three, we call them measures of central tendency. What do? Basically, we are using one value to judge the data set. So if we are talking of your marks, if we put all your marks and divide by how many learners wrote that task, we are going to end up getting one value. And that value is what we call the measure of central tendency. So let's talk. When we talk of mean, how do we get mean? We must add all our values, then we divide by how many numbers are there or how many values are there. So here you can see we add the 54, 54, 55, all of them, they will give us 623. Then we check how many values, individual values are there. There are 11 of them. So when we divide, we are going to get 56.6. This is how you work out the mean. Don't forget that. Median. Median, another word that you can get from there is what? Middle, after arranging. Do not forget. So median is what? Middle after arranging. Let's go again. Median is middle after arranging. So what is the key word here? Arranging. If you don't arrange the data set, it becomes difficult for you to find the median. So once you have all the data set, then you must check if all the values have been arranged. And in our arrangement, we have two ways. If you arrange from small to big, we call it what? Ascending. Say it after me. Ascending order. It means we are taking it from small to big. What is the opposite then if we take it from big to small? How do we call it? Good. We call it what? Descending order. Are we good? So which one is which? Can you remind me? We have ascending order and descending order. Which one is which? Ascending order means we are taking it from small to big. Descending order means we are arranging it from big to small. Don't forget that. So whenever you hear median, it is middle after arranging. Therefore, in the examiner will be saying, arrange the data set in ascending order. It means they want you to start from small to big. Don't forget. If they say in descending order, it means you write the big number first, followed by the next big one until you get to the smallest one. Then we talk of mode. Whenever you hear the word mode, sometimes they will say modal. Sometimes they can even say modus, M-O-D-U-S. We are referring to the most appearing value. The most appearing value. If you can check in our data set, there is 54. There are 3 of them. Okay, 57, there are 2 of them. 58, there are 2 of them. 60, there are 2 of them. So from those values that I have circled, which one appears more than the others? Good. We have got 54. There are 3 of them. It's more than that. But let's say the 54, they were not 3. And let's say 57 is 2, 54 is 2, 58 is 2. It means that we can have more than one value appearing equally. In that case, we can have like 2 numbers appearing or 3 numbers appearing. What do? We write all those values which appear equally. Are we together? Let's say the 54 is 3 and the 57 is also 3. We are going to write 54 and 57. We write them. Even if the 58 was also appearing 3 times, then we're going to have 54, 57, and 58. Does that make sense to you? You don't just say I'm going to write only one. You write all those values that appear equally. In our case here, we are not writing 57, we are not writing 58, we are not writing 60 because they appear 2, 2, 2. But there is a number which appears more than 2. Like in our case here, we have got 54. So our mode is 54. Now I have spoken enough. Let's look at some few exam questions. Use the data alongside to answer the questions that follow. Question 1.1. Identify the second shortest distance walked by a learner. The second shortest. How do you find this one? It means you must start from the smallest. The next smallest value is what we call the second shortest. Do not forget. So we are talking of what? Second, not the shortest, the second shortest. Distance walked by a learner, these are the distances. So we are not talking of the marks yet. We are talking of the distances that have been walked by the learner. So you look through that. 1.2, they want us to determine the highest mark. So can you see highest mark? Meaning we are looking at marks. Therefore, you come through where the marks are. And then you look through all and look for the marks that looks to you as the biggest. And then you write it down. 1.3. Name one data collection instrument used to collect this data. Remember when we were starting, I was giving you ways that we can use to collect data. Your interviews, your questionnaires, your surveys, observation, and so on. Which one of them can be used here to collect this kind of data? If you want to find out the distances that have been covered by learners, how are you going to collect that? Think about it. Then you should be able to provide the answer for me. 1.4, determine the median. What did I say about median? Middle after arranging. Median is what? Middle after arranging. So you need to arrange the marks. then you can be able to find the middle. 1.5, we are now supposed to find the mode. What did we speak about the mode? We said mode is the most appearing value in the data set. But remember, there can be more than one mode. 1.6, calculate the mean. Do you remember what we do with the mean? Good. We must add all of them and then we divide by how many numbers are there, okay? So we are talking of the mean mark, meaning we are going to use these values here, not the distances. 1.7, now they're asking you a question. Is the data in the table regarding the distances here, is it an example of a continuous or discrete? How do you choose which one is which? Remember, if it is discrete, it means you can count. Do you count the distance or you measure a distance? Think about it. Okay, if you can count it, it is discrete. If you can measure it, it is continuous. So let's look at our answers then. The first one, there is 250 or 0.25, the second shortest. Then the next one is 49. Then they were asking us which instrument can we use to collect our data. We can use a questionnaire or a survey. So now we are looking for median. Remember what I said again, median is the middle after arranging. So after arranging, we are finding that this is our middle number, which is what? 30. Then we get to mode. Do you remember what I said about mode? The most appearing value. So you can see here in our data set, the number 28 appears the same as the number 30. So the 28, how many are there? We have 1, 2, 3. And then 30, we have 1, 2, 3. There are those two numbers which appear more than all the other values. That's why you see me writing both of them. Don't forget that. Then to find the mean, what do? We add all the values and divide by how many are there. So all the values, when you add, they will give us 111. Then you divide by 11 values, which will give us 31.32. Then they're asking you the distances. Is it continuous or discrete? The distances, is it continuous or discrete? It is continuous because you don't count the distance, you measure a distance. Okay, right. Now, remember I was saying to you when I was talking about measures of central tendency, I said remove the range. Now we are talking of the other one. It is no longer measures of central tendency. We are now talking of measures of spread. Say it after me. Measures of spread. So whenever we talk of measures of spread, we want to see how close together or far apart is our data set. So here we use various forms. We have the range, we have the quartiles, and the interquartile range, and then we also have percentiles. So let's start. When we talk of range, according to what do you still remember? Range is the biggest minus smallest or highest value minus the lowest value. Then we go to what you call quartiles. So whenever you hear quartiles, quartiles divide the data set into 4 equal parts. It divides whatever the data set into 4 equal parts. So once you are able to divide the data set into 4 equal parts, they now have got names. We have 5 things. We call them the 5 number summary. So whatever the data you are dealing with, we can always have 5 number summary. Those 5 values which summarizes the entire data that you have. So the first one is the minimum, meaning the smallest number. The next one is the maximum, the biggest number. Then we have quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3. When you have them, minimum, maximum, Q1, Q2, Q3. That's what you call the 5 number summary. Then because we are talking of range, then we have what you call interquartile range. Remember, it ends with an R. It's still a range. And how do you find range? Biggest minus smallest. So whenever you come to interquartile range or IQR, it means we are finding the range of the quartiles. Remember I said we have Q1, Q2, Q3. Okay, so to find IQR is going to be Q3 minus Q1. Q3 minus Q1, just like the way you will say range is the highest minus the lowest. IQR is also the biggest quartile minus the smallest quartile. So in examination, the examiner will give you the formula. If they don't give you the formula and you do remember to write it down, sometimes they even give you mark for that. So let's ask ourselves some few things. Now, the 5-number summary that I was talking to you about, remember, it's minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, maximum. Where are they? Meaning the lowest mark is our minimum. The biggest or the highest mark is our maximum. Can I ask you a question then? What is the name of this whole diagram that you see on the screen? We call it box and whisker plot, or box and whisker diagram. Say it again, box and whisker. Box and whisker. So here is the box. Do you see it? Here is our box, and then these are the whiskers. Okay. So that's why we call it what? Box and whisker plot. What do we use to plot the box and whisker plot? We use the 5-number summary. So if you look closely, we have minimum, Q1, Q2, Q3, and maximum. When you put them together, you get what you call the box and whisker plot. In examination, the examiner is not going to be asking you to plot. Yours is to interpret the box and whisker diagram. So it is very important to know which line represents what. These are the lines. When you see the first line, it is your Q1, assuming the data is arranged. Then the next line is the first line is minimum. The next line is Q1. The next line is Q2. Then the next one is Q3. The last line is our maximum. It is not called Q4. There's no Q4, it's the maximum. So don't forget that. Now, let's talk. Remember I said to you, we are on measures of spread. We want to know how far apart our data is. So we are looking at the other portion, which we call the percentiles. Percent out of 100. So when we give you a work out of 100 and then you score maybe 60, we will say you got 60 over 100. Sometimes we call it 60%, percentile out of 100. So whenever we are able to divide our data set into 100 parts, we have what you call percentiles. Are we good? So now remember we said the first line is minimum. The next line is Q1. The next line is Q2. The next line is Q3. The next line is maximum. And then can you see our data set is now into 4 equal parts? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if we have all the 4, 25, 25, 25, 25, they give us 100. Are we there? So our Q1, here is our Q1. It represents 25%. Which means Q2 represents 50%, Q3 represents 75%. So if that is the case, then tell me something. The whole box here, what is the percentage that it represents? The box alone. Good. It represents 50 because there's 25 and 25. So the box alone represents 50%. Does that make sense to you? Good. So Q3, this line, it represents what? 75%. Q2 represents 50%, and then Q1 represents 25%. Those are what we call percentiles. Can we now look at some few exam questions then? Look at the first one. It says, below are 2 box and whisker plots showing the results of a test taken by 2 different grade 12 classes with 16 learners in each class. The test was out of 90. So they didn't give us the values, but they gave us the box and whisker plot. Remember, here, what is the name of the first line? Good, minimum. What's the name of this line? Q1. How about this one? Q2, this one, Q3, and then this one, maximum. Do not forget. So what is our minimum mark for class A? There it is. What is our Q1? 44.5. Q2, 64. Q3, 68. What was the maximum mark the learner got in that class? 83. So if that is the case, let's look at the first question. What was the highest mark in the grade? So what do you think we're going to do? We're going to look for the mark which is the biggest. Then we write it down. 1.2. Write down the lowest mark in the grade. We have two minimums. We have one minimum here, one minimum there. Which one of the two is the smallest? That's what the examiner wants you to write. Let's look at 1.3. Calculate the range. Remember, range is what? Biggest minus smallest. So calculate the range in marks for each class. I want to see how you're going to answer that one. 1.4. Determine the percentage of learners in class A who scored more than 68 marks. Determine the percentage. Remember, I told you each line has got its own percentage when we were talking about percentiles. So now I'm testing you. I'm giving you a question that requires you to think back. 1.5. Determine the number of learners in class B who scored less than 44.5. How many learners scored less than 44.5? So here are our answers, and I hope you are going to get them correct. The highest mark for that class was 83. The lowest mark for class A was 34. Now, the range for class A, 83 minus 34 is 49. The range for class B is 81 minus 43 is 38. How many learners scored more than 68? The percentage is 25%, okay? And then from class B, we're talking of the learners who scored less than 44.5%. Remember, 44.5% represents 25%. So what we are doing is to find 25% of how many learners are in the class? 16 learners. So it means that 4 learners did not manage to score more than 44.5. That is how you find the values if you know the percentages. Now we are looking at another point. Remember, we are revising. So we are focusing this time on growth charts. What are growth charts? They are used to monitor the growth and development of babies and children. Growth chart. Do not forget that. Ne? So when we are talking of growth chart, then it means that we are focusing on what we call body mass index, BMI, body mass index. So when we talk of body mass index, we are talking about our weight divided by our height squared. Whatever value we get is our BMI. And once we get the value, we can be able to use what we call the BMI table. So in the BMI table, if the answer that you get after your weight divided by your height squared is below 18.5, then we call you underweight. If your value is from 18.5 up until 24.9, sure, you're fine. Call it normal weight, healthy. If your mark or the value you get is from 25 up until 29.9, now you are overweight. Sometimes in some books or some question papers, they even call it at risk of overweight. At risk. That is if you belong in here. Then once your BMI value is 30 or more, we now call it obese or obese, whichever way you pronounce it. It means that you are highly overweight. So for that to happen in the examination, then the examiner will give us the growth chart. Then they will be asking us questions. If you look closely, there are various lines, but you can see all the lines are not going smooth the same way. It is drawn and is given to us from the Center of Disease Control, from the World Health Organization. So don't worry about where it's coming from. But then they are telling us on the left and on the right, we have got the BMI values. And the BMI is measured in kilogram per meter squared. What is the unit for BMI? Kilogram per meter squared. So if you are in the blue, we say you are overweight. If you are in the red, we are talking of what? Risk of overweight or obese. If you are in the yellow, you are healthy. And then if you are in the purple, then we are saying you are underweight. So when they give us this, then they will be asking us a variety of questions. Okay, now let's look at that. When we say the value is at 5%. Here is our 5%, the second line from the bottom. This is 5%. Okay, 5%. What does that mean? Because the examiner wants you to explain what does the 5 percentile of the 5th percentile mean. 5% means 5% of the learners or children that are your weight are below your weight, and 95% of the children your weight are above yours. So what you should remember is that whatever percent they give to you, it must add up to 100. So let's say they give you and they're saying that your weight is on 25% or 25th percentile. What it means is that 25% of the learners are below your weight and 75% are above your weight. Where did I get 75? Remember I said to you that your value must always add up to 100. So when the examiner gave you 25%, then you are short of what? 75, because 25 goes to 75 to get 100. If they give you 40, it means you are short of 60. So if it is 40th percentile, then it means 40% of learners are below your weight, 60% of the learners are above your weight. That is how you do the interpretation. So never forget that. You are going to be asked questions on BMI, how to interpret. Remember, we are revising, so you have to do more of the work also. Right. What have we talked about today? We are revising part 2 of our paper 1. Remember, in part 1, we spoke about finance. But in part 2, our focus was on what? Data handling. So you have to get yourself ready to try and apply it very well. And that is the reason why I am giving you a homework which will require that you go and try to answer them to boost your understanding. And after everything, you will see that you are going to be very much ready for that. Now, because we are coming to the end of this one, then we are going to focus on paper 2, revision part 1. So in the paper 2, also like paper 1, we splitted it. So we are going to have a full video on finance, then that maps and plans, and a full video on measurement in the paper 2. So I wish that I will see you there so that we can be able to revise together. Thank you very much, my learners, for staying with me up to this point. I will see you soon in the revision paper 2 part 1. Bye bye.